At a family dinner meant to be casual and lighthearted, my dad suddenly mentioned he'd been sending me $3,000 every month to help out. The room went quiet, but my mind was racing because I hadn't seen a single dime. As the realization sank in, I looked around at the people who had access to that money. What I did next left my dad, and everyone else, completely stunned. My name's Tasha, and I'll share a piece of my past, when life was simple, just dad, mom, and me. We lived in an old, sprawling house with more rooms than I cared to count. It was the kind of peaceful place where laughter echoed and a delicious aroma always lingered from the kitchen. Mom was the soul of our home, greeting the day with her cheerful voice calling, "Tasha, rise and shine, sweetheart." Even when I dragged myself out of bed with a typical teen grumble, her bright smile and a stack of pancakes made everything feel warm. Dad, on the other hand, was the fun one. He always had a quick joke or a tale from his younger days. "When I was your age," he'd say with a wink, "I thought a guitar and a wild haircut were all I needed to take on the world." Even though he later proved that a suit and a calm head work wonders. Life was more than good, it was perfect. But as the saying goes, nothing lasts forever. When Mom fell ill, it felt like our little paradise began to crumble. I vividly remember that fateful day. We were in the living room, a TV humming in the background, when she broke the news in a steady voice laced with fear: cancer. The word hit me like a ton of bricks. Dad squeezed her hand, their silent exchange promising that they'd fight the battle together. The following months were grueling. Hospitals, treatments, Mom losing her hair, yet never her spirit. She even joked about saving money on shampoo, though I could see the tears she tried to hide and the worry Dad whispered about when he thought I was asleep. Then, on the day we lost her, everything changed. Dad and I clung to one another, desperate to hold our shattered family together. "We'll get through this, Tasha," he'd say, voice rough as his eyes darkened with exhaustion. A year later, Dad introduced a new presence into our lives, Victoria. She was like a whirlwind, all perfect hair and sharp style, swiftly taking charge of the remnants of Mom's legacy. The first time we met, she sized me up with a smirk as if I were a puzzle already solved. She touched Mom's things, rearranged our furniture, and told me, "George says you're a smart kid. You'll help out around here now that I'm running the show." I felt a flash of anger rise in me. Help out? This is my home, not some boot camp, I thought. But for Dad's sake, I bit my tongue. Dad seemed to shrink a little more every day. His laughter grew softer and his stories less frequent, all in the name of moving on. I wasn't convinced though, especially when our new house, twice as big as the old one, brought twice as much work. The very first day, Victoria stormed in, her high heels clicking on the marble floor as she barked orders to the movers. Once they left, her cold gaze fixed on me. "Tasha, I expect you to take care of your own space. I don't have time to clean up after you." I leaned against the doorway, muttering, "Got it," already dreading the endless list of chores she'd pile on, including dinner at 6 o'clock sharp every night, as if I couldn't boil water without disaster. As weeks passed, our house felt less like home and more like a stylish prison. Dad was away a lot, struggling to keep his business alive, leaving me alone with Victoria's relentless demands. "Tasha, the living room is dusty. Tasha, the silver isn't polished. Tasha, did you forget the dry cleaning?" One afternoon, Dad finally noticed my growing tension as he found me in the garden, forcefully pulling weeds. "Hey, Tasha, you've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" I tossed a clump of weeds into the bin, wiping my brow, and muttered, "I'm just tired, Dad. This place is overwhelming." His eyes softened. "Maybe I can talk to Victoria about hiring some help." I almost laughed. Good luck with that. Victoria seemed to view me as her personal maid, and Dad's face grew stern, a side of him I rarely saw. "That's not what I planned when we moved here," he said. "I'll handle it, Tasha. You shouldn't carry all this alone." But despite his best intentions, talking to Victoria was like speaking into a void. She'd nod, flash that tight smile, and then order, "Tasha, the hedges are overgrown. Tasha, the guest rooms need fresh linens." I pushed myself harder, determined not to let her break me. I just had to keep my head down until college came, a time when I could finally claim my own space, free of orders on when to mop or serve dinner. Finally, the day arrived when I was leaving for college, a city miles away where I could start anew. Early that morning, I packed up my life into heavy suitcases, each one a brick in the foundation of my future. Dad came out to see me off, trying to smile through the pain. "Tasha, are you sure you've got everything you need?" he asked, scanning the pile of bags. "And remember, you'll call if you need anything. Check your account for the rent and books money." I laughed weakly. "Dad, I'm just going to college, not Mars." I tried to keep things light, though my heart pounded with both excitement and sorrow. College was everything I imagined: small apartment, my own rules, and classes that pushed me to be tougher than ever. Yet, living on a tight budget proved challenging. Money was always a worry. I rarely went out, saving every penny instead of blowing cash at parties, determined to secure a future where I'd never rely on anyone. Not Victoria, not anyone. I even picked up a part-time job at a local cafe. It wasn't glamorous, but it helped. One evening, While counting my tips for the third time, my coworker Mike smirked. What? Trying to make those bills multiply by staring at them. I rolled my eyes and stuffed the cash in my wallet, just making sure everything was accounted for. Mike, always trying to lighten the mood, tossed his apron aside and said, "You could take a break and join us tonight for a drink." I hesitated. Tempting, but I replied, "Sorry, I need to save every penny." I was building a future, one where I'd eventually afford something nice for Dad, a token of my appreciation for all he'd done. Just when I thought I had college life under control, everything began to unravel. It started with an unexpected call. Victoria's voice, cool and detached, came through. "Tasha, your father's hit a rough financial patch. We're tightening belts, and unfortunately, we can't send money for your rent anymore." Before I could protest, the line went dead. I was stunned. The reality hit hard. No more money meant no more apartment, no safety net. Desperate, I explained my situation to Jenny, a kind friend from college. "Tasha, that's awful. Why don't you move in with me? We could split the rent, and it'd be cheaper," she offered. Moving in with Jenny was a breath of fresh air during those suffocating days. Sharing costs made life a bit more bearable. But just as I was starting to adjust, another blow came 6 months later. Victoria messaged me on social media. "No more money for tuition either. Your father's situation hasn't improved. You need to stand on your own now." Reading her words, anger and despair churned inside me. My savings were meager, slowly eaten away by bills. I tightened my budget further, cutting every non-essential expense. Meals became mere sustenance rather than treats, and I even noticed my clothes hanging looser. One evening, Jenny knocked on my door with arms full of groceries. "Hey Tasha, I picked up some extras, dinner's ready. Come eat with us," she urged. I peeked out, tempted by the warm light and inviting smells, but I shook my head. "Thanks, Jen, but I need to save every penny for tuition." Jenny frowned, her voice firm. "Tasha, you need to eat, and you're not paying for this." I wanted to argue for keeping that thread of independence I was clinging to, but another rumble from my stomach betrayed me. "Okay, maybe just a little," I muttered under my breath. As the semester dragged on, I dove deeper into my studies. The only escape from this financial mess was through scholarships, and I wasn't about to risk losing that chance. Jenny often tried to lure me into taking breaks, attending parties, or simply hanging out with friends. "Tasha, come on, you can't study all the time. Get out with us tonight. It'll be fun, and you need a break." I always gave the same answer. "I can't, Jenny. I really need to ace these exams." She'd protest. "You're always working or studying. When do you ever relax?" I'd snap back. "Relaxing doesn't pay the bills," without ever looking up from my books. The pressure built up, and my body started to give in. Long hours at work followed by even longer nights of studying left me running on empty. I couldn't stop, not when I was so close to winning that scholarship and securing my future. My shift at the diner felt endless, and by the time I clocked out, the sky was ablaze with streaks of orange and pink. Exhaustion barely scratched the surface of how I felt, but class waited for no one, and I had a midterm looming. I planned a quick shower and a straight trip to campus, but as I reached for my keys, a wave of dizziness hit me. The world spun, the ground rushed up, and the last thing I remember was the cold pavement against my cheek before everything went dark. I woke with a start, the sterile smell of antiseptic filling my senses. Blinking against harsh fluorescent lights, I found myself in a hospital bed with 4 drips attached to my arm and Jenny sitting by my side, her face a mix of relief and worry. "Tasha, you're awake. God, you scared me. I found you passed out outside your apartment," she said shakily. The doctor added, "You're severely malnourished and dehydrated. You've been pushing yourself too hard. You need to rest." Rest was a luxury I couldn't afford, not with everything hanging by a thread, but even arguing felt like running a marathon when I was so drained. After a few days of observation, I was discharged with strict instructions to take it easy, orders that were as effective as riding on sand. I went straight home, my body weak, but my mind racing with everything I still needed to catch up on. Once home, I tried calling Dad, needing his voice to explain what had happened. Maybe he could help, but the calls went straight to voicemail. Frustrated and feeling more alone than ever, I dialed Victoria's number. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Yes, it's Tasha," I started, but my words tangled with emotions I couldn't control. "Your father is out of the country on business," she interrupted sharply, adding, "And no, we can't help. You're on your own." Her words stung like a slap, and there was nothing left to say. Sitting there with my phone in hand, the weight of her dismissal sank in. In that quiet apartment, I truly realized how alone I was. Exams loomed over me like dark clouds ready to burst, and the stress felt like fingers squeezing my throat. To keep up with my studies, I had to let go of one of my jobs. The money that had been trickling in now felt completely dried up. I sat across from Jenny in our usual diner, nervously fiddling with the menu while my stomach growled and my wallet felt painfully empty. "Stop looking at the prices, Tasha. I've got this," Jenny said firmly but kindly, trying to be supportive. Accepting help had never been easy. "I'll pay you back every cent." I mumbled, each word heavy with resignation. Jenny rolled her eyes and smiled. Yeah, I know. Just order something hearty, all right? You look like you need it. Reluctantly, I ordered the cheapest meal, my pride stinging with every bite. But Jenny was right. I needed the energy, especially with exam after exam coming at me. Nights blurred into days as textbooks and notes piled up like a fortress around me. When the results finally arrived, I couldn't believe my eyes. A clear pass with a tuition bonus shone like a small, but significant light at the end of a very dark tunnel. I should have been overjoyed, but all I did was collapse into bed, my body and mind shutting down from sheer exhaustion. I slept for days, missing calls and messages, while the world moved on without me. One lonely night in my small apartment, I dreamed of Mom. I saw her in our old kitchen, humming a tune with a warm, inviting smile. Tasha, come here, sweetheart, she called softly, a comforting echo of better times. In my dream, I moved towards her, basking in the feeling of being home and safe. But as dreams do, it ended, and I awoke in tears, the ache in my chest raw and fierce. The emptiness was suffocating, and the desperate need to reconnect with her overwhelmed me. In that moment, I made a decision that felt like grasping at straws, but was necessary. I would return to my hometown, visit her grave, and maybe find some of that peace I had seen in my dream. Checking my bank account, I calculated what I could afford, a cheap bus ticket, the lowest fare I could find. Work could manage without me for a few days. I wasn't used to taking time off or leaning on anyone in my current state. Jenny, I'm going home for a couple of days. I told her over the phone, my voice steadier than I felt. There was a pause, and I could almost picture her furrowing her brow in concern. Are you sure that's a good idea? She asked. Okay, but call me anytime, day or night. Promise, I replied, feeling a warm reassurance in her concern. The journey back was a blur, my thoughts tangled with memories and what-ifs. As the bus rolled into the familiar streets of my hometown, a mix of dread and longing churned in my stomach. It was meant to be a simple visit to feel close to Mom again, but as I walked among the weathered gravestones, a figure caught my eye. My heart skipped a beat at the sight of someone with a familiar stoop, kneeling by a grave. My pace quickened in disbelief and hope. Dad, I said tentatively, almost afraid to break the fragile moment. The figure turned, and our eyes met. A flicker of confusion, then recognition, and a glimmer of sorrow. Tasha, his voice cracked with emotion. It had been so long. I ran to him, no longer caring about the cold or the tears streaming down my face. Dad, what are you doing here? He rose quickly, nearly stumbling, and enveloped me in a hug that made me feel 5 years old again, safe and cherished. I had a dream about your mother, he confessed, pulling back just enough to see my face. She told me to come here today. I gasped. The coincidence was too stark to ignore. I had a dream about her too, Dad. He wiped away my tears with a worn handkerchief, his rough fingers gentle as he said, Seems like she's still watching over us, huh? Yeah, seems like it. I agreed, laughter mingling with my tears. We need to talk, Dad said, his tone hopeful yet cautious. Come back to the house with me. I hesitated, memories of Victoria and cold, empty stares flashing through my mind. Are you sure? What about Victoria? She'll manage. You're my daughter, and we have a lot to catch up on, he replied firmly, a firmness I hadn't heard in a long time. The ride to the house was filled with an awkward but comforting silence. When we arrived, Victoria was in the front yard trimming roses with sharp snips that echoed her mood. Tasha, what are you doing here? She demanded, her eyes narrowing as she took in my presence. I stepped forward, bolstered by Dad's support. Dad, we need to talk. He nodded at Victoria. Why don't you make us some dinner? We'll be inside. Victoria's mouth tightened, but she nodded stiffly and went inside. Dad led me into the living room, a space that once felt warm but now seemed arranged more for appearances than comfort. The tension in the dining room was thick enough to cut. Victoria, looking paler than usual, fussed about an urgent errand, but Dad's voice stopped her cold. Sit down. We're not done here. Reluctantly, Victoria sat, twisting her hands nervously in her lap. Dad turned to me, his brows furrowed with concern. Tasha, you've lost so much. Are you on some sort of diet? I shook my head and let out a bitter laugh. Diet? Hardly. It's not a choice, Dad, it's necessity. I've been struggling to make ends meet, paying my tuition and living expenses by myself. His confusion was clear. What are you talking about? I've been sending $33,000 every month to cover your expenses. It's been deposited on the 15th every month. I stared at him, stunned. Dad, I haven't seen a dime of that money for the past 2 years. I've been working 2 jobs just to cover my bills and tuition. The color drained from his face as he turned to Victoria. Is this true? Where's the money? Victoria stood up abruptly, her chair scraping loudly. I needed it. It wasn't supposed to be permanent. Dad's voice turned low and dangerous. Tell me everything now. Victoria hesitated, then confessed. I got involved in a financial pyramid scheme. I thought I could make a quick buck to turn around our financial situation, but I ended up in debt. The people I dealt with, they aren't the kind you can say no to. I used Tasha's money to pay them off. thinking I could replace it before anyone noticed. Dad's hands trembled. You endangered my daughter's health and education over a get-rich-quick scam, and you hid it from me. Victoria whimpered, her usual composure shattered. I didn't know what to do. You're leaving tonight, Dad declared firmly, standing up. And we're done here. I want a divorce. Victoria hurriedly packed a few belongings and left. Dad then turned to me, eyes filled with sorrow. Tasha, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. From now on, I'll handle your finances directly. No more middleman. I managed a small smile. Actually, Dad, I got a scholarship recently. My tuition's covered. His eyes lit up with pride, the anger replaced by admiration. That's my girl, always making me proud. But you deserve a break. How about a real vacation by the sea? You've earned it. That vacation was a dream. Blue skies, golden beaches, and the soothing sound of waves. A chance to recharge and leave behind the struggles and pain. I returned with renewed energy, ready to tackle my studies with fresh enthusiasm. Back at school, I still worked part-time, not out of necessity, but to save up for something special. A gift for Dad, a thank you for everything. Despite the hardships, I even started attending the occasional party with friends, allowing myself to enjoy life instead of just enduring it. One evening, as I dressed up, Jenny remarked, I see you're going out more. Yeah, I'm trying to find a balance. I guess I'm learning that it's okay to have a little fun, I replied, adjusting my earrings. Just don't forget about us when you're famous, she joked, tossing a cushion my way. I won't, couldn't ever. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. As I looked in the mirror, I saw someone who had weathered a storm and emerged stronger. I was still careful with money. Old habits die hard. But now it was out of a desire to build a future. A future that, at last, was starting to look bright. After that life-changing conversation with Dad, I began to embrace a new chapter. The days following our intense meeting felt like the closing of a painful episode and the start of something more hopeful. I settled into a slower rhythm, one that allowed me to balance my academic pursuits with moments of self-care. My renewed outlook was like a gentle sunrise after a long, stormy night, gradually illuminating possibilities I had long forgotten existed. Back on campus, I discovered that the extra hours I once devoted to relentless studying were now punctuated by short, mindful breaks. A few minutes of deep breathing or a brisk walk outside recharged my mind, making my study sessions more productive and less overwhelming. Friends noticed the change in me too. Jenny, who had always urged me to take a break, now smiled as I joined her for coffee on lazy afternoons. You're doing well, Tasha, she said warmly, and I could only nod in grateful acknowledgement, cherishing these moments of normalcy that were finally returning. As the semester advanced, my professors recognized not only my improved grades, but the steady transformation in my outlook. It wasn't solely about academic performance anymore. It was about the journey of self-discovery. I began to appreciate learning for its own sake, finding beauty in the gradual accumulation of knowledge rather than just in the final results. Late nights in the library became less isolating as I joined study groups with classmates who, like me, had weathered their own storms. We supported one another through the pressure of looming exams, sharing notes and small confidences that revealed our vulnerabilities. In those moments, I realized the true value of community, a reminder that even in isolation, we are never truly alone. The vacation by the sea had done more than simply restore my energy. It had rekindled my spirit. I remember the first time I dipped my toes into the cool ocean water, feeling as if the waves were washing away not only the sand from my skin, but also the accumulated stress of endless nights and anxious worries. In that serene moment, I made a silent promise to myself, never to lose sight of self-care. I vowed to return to that tranquil beach someday, not as an escape from responsibilities, but as a celebration of progress. Even as I resumed my academic life, that memory served as a beacon, guiding me through challenges with the hope of brighter days. One crisp autumn evening, after a particularly grueling exam, I sat on a bench outside campus watching leaves swirl in the cool breeze. The golden hues and the rustle of the trees echoed a sentiment of change. I recalled how far I had come, from days when exhaustion overwhelmed me to now, when I allowed myself to pause and appreciate the beauty surrounding me. This transformation was not solely academic or financial, it was deeply personal. I evolved from someone consumed by fear and isolation into a person who had learned the strength found in vulnerability and the power of hope. Yet, challenges still emerged. Some days, the weight of pressure threatened to bring me down, and the old habits of overexertion would creep in. But now, armed with the lessons of hardship and healing, I faced each obstacle with quiet resilience. I learned to ask for help when needed, to share my burdens instead of carrying them alone. With each step forward, I began rebuilding not only my academic career, but also my inner well-being. I returned to journaling, a long-forgotten habit, and discovered solace in putting my tangled thoughts on paper. Each written word helped me process emotions I had buried under layers of obligation and fear. Dad's steady support became a constant source of comfort. Our relationship, once strained by unspoken disappointments and harsh words, slowly transformed into one of mutual understanding. We spent long hours discussing our shared past, our mistakes, regrets, and the lessons they brought. Though these conversations were at times painful, they were also deeply healing. I began to see him not merely as a figure of authority, but as a human being who had faced his own battles and emerged wiser. His decision to manage my finances directly was more than a corrective measure. It symbolized his determination to be involved in my recovery and to help me build a future free from the shadows of past errors. The turning point came on a chilly winter night when I received an unexpected call from one of my professors. She commended my progress and invited me to join a prestigious academic program. That call affirmed that every sacrifice and every sleepless night had not been in vain. I accepted the offer with both excitement and cautious optimism, knowing this opportunity could be the stepping stone to a brighter future. Her words echoed in my mind as I reflected on the long road from despair to hope, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose ignite within me. As the academic year drew to a close, I looked back on the tumultuous months with quiet gratitude. The hardships, the endless study sessions, and even the tears had forged a transformation as profound as it was painful. I learned that resilience is not about never falling. It is about rising again, each time stronger and more determined. Every challenge uncovered hidden reserves of courage within me, proving that the human spirit is capable of remarkable recovery and growth. I had chosen to seek help, to forgive my past, and to embrace the support of those who cared, turning my story into a testament to hope and perseverance. In the final chapters of that year, I stepped forward into a future that was both uncertain and full of promise. I continued my studies not merely as a means to an end, but as a lifelong journey of self-improvement. I maintained a delicate balance between ambition and self-care, learning that success is measured not only by academic achievements, but also by the capacity to live authentically and joyfully. My days became a blend of diligent work and moments of spontaneous laughter, each one a celebration of survival and growth. The bonds I formed, with friends, with family, and even with strangers who offered unexpected kindness, became my anchors during stormy times. Each conversation, each shared smile, added another layer to the sturdy foundation upon which I was rebuilding my life. Looking back, I realized that every setback, every tear, and every moment of doubt had prepared me for this new beginning. I had become a beacon of hope for others facing similar struggles, a living reminder that even the darkest nights can give way to dawn. The hardships of my past no longer defined me. Instead, they underscored my journey toward resilience and renewal. With gratitude for every lesson learned and every hand extended in support, I stepped boldly into the next phase of my life, ready to embrace new challenges and celebrate every small victory along the way. In that moment of transition, as I stood at the crossroads of my past and future, I understood that life is a tapestry woven with threads of pain and hope, loss and love. I carried with me the wisdom of my experiences, the strength of my convictions, and the enduring belief that every struggle contains the seed of a new beginning. The story of my life was far from over. It was a continuous journey of healing, growth, and the unyielding pursuit of dreams. And with each passing day, I vowed to honor the past while eagerly welcoming the promise of tomorrow, confident that even in the midst of life's uncertainties, hope would always light the way. I stepped forward with an open heart and an unwavering spirit, determined to create a future defined by resilience, compassion, and the endless possibility of new beginnings.